Errors are frustrating, but they make writing code much easier because eventually when you do make a mistake, because you will if you are programming, an error will literally tell you where you made the mistake and then what kind of mistake it was. For example, let's say you forgot a bracket, or maybe you added an extra slash. The console will tell you, oh, invalid syntax or something like that. Or, maybe if you try to change a constant value, it'll say, hey, you can't change a constant value. And, while this can be frustrating at first, this is a lot better than having a logic error, which doesn't return anything to the console and you have to find manually by yourself. So let's look at some examples. This first example, let's say you have a function that takes parameter 1 and parameter 2 and then returns the addition between those two. Now let's say you have a outside variable called parm2, P-A-R-M-2. And let's say instead of writing parameter 2, you accidentally type in this outside variable parm. Now, instead of adding parameter 1 and parameter 2, you're going to be adding parameter 1 parm2. Now, this will cause unexpected behaviors, and even though it will technically never error, it's not going to, the code's not going to do what you want, right? So, this is kind of the appeal of like TypeScript and other languages like that, because they prevent things like unused parameters, like it's going to throw an error. I mean, another way you can go about this is checking if both parameters are being used. So I'm in using TypeScript or something like that. Maybe being careful with parameter names, but yeah, something like this here would benefit a lot from having an error, because you really just have to go off, you being observant. Here, now this is a combination of a string and a number, so it'll convert this number right here into a string, and then the output would be 11 as a string, or I guess double 1. Now, let's say you intended to add these two numbers, 1 plus 1, 2. Now, what you could do is add a if statement, and let's say these come from variables, right? Check each variable's type to make sure they're both of numbers. If they are, add. If not, throw an error. Now, let's say this came from a function, from this function, and these parameters are user inputs. Now, type checking here would just make sure that you're not combining these as strings and you're adding them as numbers. And, even though you could just wrap this string in a number function, which converts strings into numbers, and then this string into a number function, and then since I'm saying they're parameters as an example, you could just wrap this and this into number functions. You could do that, but I mean, if you ever forget, it's just adding another layer of complexity. If you ever forget and you don't write number, you don't convert it into a number, then you're just going to have another logic error. Now here, let's say you mistype this random variable. and this constant value. You want to set this random variable to a constant value, but you accidentally flip it. And let's say you don't really care about constant. You know, you're a let guy or a girl. Then you're setting this constant variable to this random variable instead of the other way around. So this random variable would be the same while this constant value changes. Now, if you were to use the constant keyword here, you would have prevented this logic error. And, you know, actually achieve what you wanted to. But because you made these two mistakes, now you're just introducing another logic error that's going to be a lot harder to debug. My final example, let's say you have a constant value, but you know, you're using the let keyword again, and you have some function that has an if statement, and you're checking if the constant value equals 12. If it does, return true. Now, if you notice here, I only put one equal mark, or equal sign. Now, if you do this inside of an expression, it will literally set the constant value equal to 12. It's not checking, it's setting it. So it'll always return as constant value is equal to 12. And since that's a truthy value, it'll be returning true. Now, once again, if you use the constant keyword here, constant value equals 10, you would have got a, you know, changing constant error. I don't know the exact name, but I think immutability error. I don't know. You would have got an immutability error from changing a constant value. So, in conclusion, whenever you make a mistake, errors can make it easier to find and fix that mistake. If you didn't have errors, you would have to manually find the mistake that you made, and that would take a lot longer and be a lot harder. So the next time you think about complaining that you're getting a lot of errors, think it's making your code a lot easier to write. So yeah, sub if you want, like if you want.